Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3-Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry, and all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all worked for all the major publishers in the business. Together, we've published somewhere around 75 children's books, and we've all taught illustration at university art schools.
That's right. Each week we come at you guys with fantastic illustrator interviews or questions from people just like you. Each time we sometimes argue, we sometimes agree, but every time you're going to learn something brand spanking new.
The problem was because I nailed mine so good. You were thrown off. You were like,
it just threw me. I had nailed the first one, but Jake had his mic set incorrectly, so I botched that one.
I like that. I like that version. I think we should stick with it. This episode, we're digging into self-publishing. We've got our new self-publishing pro class coming up in September. So if you missed it last time, now's your chance to get into it. This is our second time running it. And so, ironed out a few of the kinks. We're dialed in on this. And if you've ever considered self-publishing, or if you have self-published, but it didn't quite go the way you wanted it to, this is a 10-week course where we just dig deep into the ins and outs of self-publishing. Mainly, it's like a holistic approach to it. So it's not just here's how you kickstart a book, but it's like here's how you come up with an idea, or here's how you take an idea that you have and position it in a way that it's irresistible to people, potential buyers for it, right? Potential fans. So go to selfpublishingpro.com to check that out. And I think we're going to kick it off here with Lee's money tip.
Lee's money tip, where I didn't plan what I said I would.
You look like a deer in the headlights. Lee's money tip. And you're like,
I'll have a money tip by the end of the show. Just keep going. I've got a list of them, but I'm not ready to give my money tip, which is very important and very well planned.
Awesome. Take us out then with the with the song again. Just kidding. Please don't. Okay. So let's go straight to our topic for today. And that is why you shouldn't, some of the reasons you shouldn't self-publish. Mm-hmm. And we all put our heads not together. We all separately went away and came up with our reasons. And I think what we'll do is just a round table. Will go first with his, Lee goes with his, and then me. And we'll just do it until we've run through all of our reasons you shouldn't self-publish. Now, the whole reason we bring this up is self-publishing. We were just talking about this, like it is its own breed. It requires its own breed of illustrator to do it. Mm-hmm. And you've got to have a few certain qualities to do it properly. I think some of them could be inherent, but they're definitely learned qualities. And we just want to, if you've ever wondered if self-publishing was for you and if you should do it, but you have some hangups, this episode can sort of be a guide to self-selecting people to whether they should move forward with it or not. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so with that, let's hear it, Will.
Okay.
I will, one more thing. I will say you might be listening to these and think, well, none of these really apply to me. That's when or 90% of these are not a problem. That's right. When maybe this is a thing that you could do and should explore and try out as an avenue.
But you should go in with eyes wide open. And that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't do. I think a lot of people think, oh, I just got to make the product. And that's actually the easy part now. I mean, we all know that. It's not on our list. Making the product is not the problem anymore. It's all the other stuff. And I should say before we get into the negative stuff, because it's a lot of work. But before we get into the negative stuff, whatever we say on this podcast, I'm still going to lead with it's worth it.
Mm.
if these aren't too big of a downside, because making your own thing, there is nothing like it.
Yeah.
When you actually are holding the thing that you said, you know what, this needs to be in the world, and you built it, and it was your vision. But that said, it's not easy. It's simple, sort of, but it's not easy. So let's dive into some of the cons.
All right. My first one. What's funny is as we go through this list, I'm going to be crossing some off because I know you guys are going to be duplicating parts of my list. So, but my first one is if your product isn't super creative, okay, if it's not super unique. And so I can give you an example, like if you're writing a children's book about monsters under the bed, I wouldn't self-publish that unless there was something about it that was different than any other book, and or if there was something that pertained particularly to a certain subgroup, subculture, right? A niche market. And I'll just go into, right now I'm working on a game. I actually just launched a video on my YouTube channel, kind of talking about it. And I'm actually going to be making a series on this game, and I can actually talk about it now because I filed for the trademark, and we're listing it as we speak on Board Game Geek. And it's called Wicked Christmas, and it's a card game. And the title alone, like I knew that I needed to come up with something that, even in the title, it would throw you, right? Like you've never heard it before, right? And so the title is something so unexpected, and we've been running Facebook ads, and our Facebook ads are doing really well. They're doing better than the minimum that we've been advised they should. So I'm using a marketing company that I'm working with, and the ads are, for instance, they don't want us to spend more than $2.50 per name. $2.50 to $3 per name is barely, with the numbers, barely profitable, right? And for reasons with the plan that I'm on right now, the plan that I'm working with is not everybody that signs up and says I'm interested in and is willing to give their email is going to buy. So if you look at the kind of the metrics and the averages, yep, if you spend $2.50 per name, you're going to end up making like $7 or $8 to cover that in your game. And anyway, the math gets complicated, but just know this, that like ours are doing we're spending about $1.50 per name right now. So ours are doing really, really well. And I think it's only because all they've seen in those Facebook ads is the box with the title of the game on it, right? And people are getting really excited. There's tons of people sharing it. We've got 2,000 people that have given us their email now, right? Like here, take my email, and I want to be notified when the game launches. That's pretty good. But the percentage of people that are going to buy out of those 2,000 people is probably going to be 15 to 20%. So it's pretty low, right? So you're spending $1.50 per email. And I believe it's the only reason is because the title's creative. So I wouldn't launch something if you didn't have a shock title, something that makes people laugh or, is interesting in some way or shape or form.
It's got to be an instant reaction, right? I mean, it's got to do something, because we've seen so many people talk about launching something, and it's just like, oh yeah, I've seen 100 of those. If you're going to launch a birthday card, for example, you better have a really, really good birthday card. You know what I mean? It's just not, it's tough to do that.
Right. Well, and I look at my spaceships books and my robots books, and those are like pretty point blank. This is a book about spaceships. This is a book about robots. It's got a compelling cover, and I'm very clear on who I think would want these books from the font style to the subject matter. Like I'm not, I'm in a way going really broad, but it's also niche. Like not everybody loves robots, not everybody loves spaceships, but the people who do love those things, their interest will definitely be piqued and they're going to want to like check it out. And I think this self-publishing sales on those are kind of like, can speak for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Cool. So that was yours, Will?
Yep.
Okay.
Got to be
What's yours,
creative.
Lee?
We're just going to keep going around, or we're just doing one? Okay.
So then yeah, we'll just go back and forth.
Okay. Mine is the length of time. Like when I used to be just a traditional illustrator and I get hired by a book or publisher, I may get a job as doing like a book cover, for example. And I know that would take me a certain amount of time, let's say 2 days to do sketches and get something that I like as a concept, take me a day to do the painting. And then I'm just waiting for payment. So I've got a total of 3 days invested. One of the things that comes with self-publishing is just the lead time to build something, to make something that actually that people want, to do your market research. The whole just scale of it is so long that you need to plan on the length of time that it takes. It can take 6 months to a year to even just get something going. And then B, you may not be making money if you're a freelancer like we are. We were literally turning down money that publishers are offering us in order to make our own thing with no guaranteed return. And so just going in there, knowing that, I mean, in my opinion, to mitigate some of these downsides, like I think the perfect place to be if you're launching your first product is to have steady gainful employment part-time and then do this thing on the weekend at nights, because then there's no risk really to you. At the end of the day, if not a single person buys it, you're still holding the thing that's awesome that you made, that you are proud of. But you can go a long time without income. I mean, the thing Will's making, I don't know how long he's been on it. I'll ask him in just a second, but my tarot deck has taken me almost 2 years to do. It's a lot. And I'm launching in March of 2025. I will have no income until at least March of next year.
Mm-hmm. See, I have like 20, 21 unique cards. Mm-hmm. And you have how many?
It's 78. But each card has to be, it's not just a simple like draw two or something like that. It is all this. It's a full illustrations. Yeah. Each one is its own little story. And so I'm doing my path is one card per week. And it literally takes me that week. I have 2 days of concepting, a day of refining sketches, and then 2 days of painting. So that's my Monday through Friday. Not the only thing I'm doing. I mean, obviously we're doing classes and some other stuff, but it's just a long lead time. And it's longer than I would have thought before I had self-published my first book, and then now the tarot deck. It's just way more involved in terms of how much time commitment you have to put into it.
Are you going to launch your Kickstarter before you're finished with all those cards?
No, I'm not doing that again. Okay. I did that last time and it was so much stress. And then also once people buy, this is another thing about Kickstarter. People are angry from the get-go. They're looking to be angry at you. They want to be mad at you for some reason. And shipping is one that they are unforgiving on. Like, so what happened to me last time, what didn't happen to me is bad, but I've seen some campaigns where it's really bad, where they still need to do some work, but the campaign's over. And people are like, sort of like, where's my product? I want my product. I paid for it already. And you're like, hey, I'm still drawing. They don't like that.
Right.
Okay, that's good. That's a good one. Mine is you don't know how to manage your own projects. So if you're someone, or you don't want to be a manager of your own project, that is sort of like an inhibitor to wanting to do self-publishing, because you're not just being the artist, you're the person who's giving yourself deadlines. So you're essentially being the art director, the editor, the publisher, the printer, because you're giving yourself deadlines. You're the person who needs to source out the printer that you're going to use, or figure out, if it's going to be an overseas printer or a domestic printer. You're the person who's figuring out the size and the shape of the book, how many pages it needs to be. You're managing all of your time. Like Lee was saying just now, it might take 2 years to finish it, but but you may not even know that because you're not good at managing time. So you kind of have to be like your own project manager, your own producer, your own boss. And if that's something you're not used to, if that's something that, you know, you're sort of, you know, just show up to a job, tell me what to do, I'll get the job done. Or a job comes in, give me the specs and the brief on it, and I'll deliver it in 2 weeks or whatever. If that's sort of what you're used to, self-publishing is a completely different animal because it's all on you, and it lives or dies by how well you can manage a project. That, I think, is one of those where it's definitely something you can learn, and it's definitely something that you can improve on each time. And so that's why we give advice to people to maybe your first project shouldn't be a 250-page graphic novel that you're going to kickstart, and you know it's going to cost a lot of money to print. Maybe your first project should be you know, a pin, like a enamel pin that you want to put out with your design, and you know you're gonna sell 50 of them, and you're gonna design a little card back to go with it, and you're gonna design a little you know, landing page for it, or open up a little shop for it. It's such a small win that you can do in a short amount of time that kind of teaches you everything you need to know about self-publishing, even though it's not a book, but it's creating something that you're selling. That's where you kind of learn this project management stuff. And then every time you can go bigger and bigger. You could, you know, do a little mini comic, a 16-page ash can or something like that. And every next project, you know, now it's a 21 card deck for a game. Now it's a 78 card tarot deck. Now it's a 100, you know, and 50-page art book or something like that. That's where I would go with why you should or shouldn't self-publish is to sort of understand it through that lens.
That's a good one.
Okay, Will.
I'm going to go back to, you know, the first one that I gave was if your product isn't really super creative, but the second one I'm going to go with is if your art and your story isn't really polished. I've seen a lot of people try to get people excited about a story that just isn't good, isn't well written, and or the artwork isn't really professional. If you know, just because you're self-publishing doesn't mean that it's an excuse to not have a lower standard or a lower quality than what would be published through a you know, traditional publisher, a big publisher, right? So I think like in self-publishing, we should be striving for you know, really, really high quality, both in art and in story and in graphic design, you know. So what, you know, you know, now having said that, I do think that there is something to be said for learning on the job, right? You know, so like one of the things that we encourage, especially in our self-publishing class, is to go ahead and try stuff. But I think that you need to have managed expectations. I had students that were, you know, publishing comics and stuff while they were in school. And they're like, I know that my comic isn't on the same level as something that Marvel would put out, you know, but you got to start somewhere. So,
Right.
So having said that, I guess what I'm saying is, if you really need money from the project, you know, if you really need it to earn, otherwise you're not going to be able to pay your rent, then you need to wait until it's really high quality, you know, work until it is. If you're looking for experience points and just to be able to get something going, which we also highly recommend, then go for it. But if you really want people to really respond, like what, and I'm just going based on like, you know, we've been running these ads now for a month on Facebook, and there's tons of comments, tons of people sharing it with their friends and family. And we have thousands of people who, you know, on Facebook, how they just like on the comment section, they don't leave a comment, but they leave their friend's name. They just tag their friend's name
Mhm.
because they want their friend or family member to see it. We have thousands of those. And the reason we have thousands of those is if I look at the other comments, it's like, oh, you had me at the artwork. You like, these characters are amazing, and the story, looks like it's going to be hilarious because the Christmas characters are basically, it's called Wicked Christmas because the characters are frustrated with the commercialism of Christmas. They're frustrated with all the hard work it is to get gift packages out. So you have Santa and the reindeer and the elves, and they're all basically, they've had it with all the work that it takes to get Christmas out. And it's funny to people seeing that because it kind of mimics the spirit of, oh crap, I got to get a present for so and so and so and so and so and so and wrap it all up and everything. And so they're commenting on that and having fun with it. So I think if you can do that, then you're going to be well on your way if you have good art and a good story.
Cool. All right, Lee.
All right. My next one is you got to be able to wear a lot of hats to do a project. It's, if you've just been drawing and painting, and I mean, that's obviously the first prerequisite, and it's the biggest one, as Will was saying, it's got to be an interesting project. But man, oh man, if you're not good at, you become a graphic designer, basically, and depending on your project, you become, I'm talking to people in China about shipping and VAT taxes, and you become the business manager. You become like I said, the person responsible for packing, the person responsible for shipping. And if you don't want to be that person, it's going to cost you. So you can get around that, but you got to hire it out. Like Will has a great designer. Decided Will could do it, I'm sure, but he decided, hey, this person's better at it than I am, and I don't want to do it anyway. But he had to pay for it. But it was a reasonable cost. But I decided to do all that stuff myself to try to save money on the project because I didn't know if it was going to make money or whatever. And it's just a huge deal to try to do all the design, to try to do all the coordination of all these moving parts. And some people are probably listening going, oh my gosh, that is not me. Then you either need to plan to pay for that, or maybe it's not for you to do a self-publishing project. So that was a big downside. I mean, it's a lot of time spent not drawing and not painting. It's, and then at the end of the day, once you have all this stuff at your house, Will has all those boxes behind him. I have all these boxes in my basement, that's my tarot deck. Where do they go? Where are you going to sell them? So then you become the salesperson, you become the ad person, you become the shopkeeper. And so you just got to know that that's part of it.
That's a good one.
That's good. That's a variant off of my got to learn how to manage your own projects. I had another one that I think it's sort of like an appendage to this sort of vein that we're going on here, and that is you shouldn't do self-publishing if you're afraid of spreadsheets. You don't understand how to use spreadsheets.
You know what's funny is I just got my first lesson in spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Oh, they're so helpful. I love them.
And I used to, like, when I first saw spreadsheets, I was like, nope,
that was me.
I do not do little squares and boxes.
No.
Oh boy, was I wrong? And now I love spreadsheets. Like, I don't know all the magical things you could do with. My brother-in-law is like a spreadsheet whiz. He can make a thing add up and subtract and do whatever. I know you do a little bit of that, Lee, which is always impressive to me. But yeah, spreadsheets are where it's at because your brain can't keep track of everything, and sheets of paper with chicken scratches on it and little numbers here and there can only get you so far.
You need to be careful with it too. I mean, for me, I get nervous without the spreadsheets. And I got to admit, this is a weird little personal quirk. I love a good spreadsheet. If it's really designed well, like if I enter one metric in one box and it auto populates a bunch of other boxes, I get this weird cheap thrill out of it. I don't know. Yeah. No idea why that is, but there's an elegance to it.
Okay. So that was my short mini.
That's a good one. Spreadsheets. Yeah. They're still scary to me, and I still have to get help with them, but it sure does make you feel warm and cozy at night when you see numbers, you know what I mean? And they're organized and they're adding up or not adding up.
Speaking of that, can I just share a little aside?
Mhm.
My Kickstarters I've done and just self-publishing in general. I've self-published outside of Kickstarter as well, but I've done, a dozen books or more. I did a projection of how much I would have to spend on shipping. And I budgeted out for this last robots book $9,900 for shipping. When we did the final tally after we shipped out all the books, it was $9,825 is what we spent.
Wow.
So I patted myself on the back that I figured out shipping is no longer a big surprise, because it has been before. I'm like, what? It costs that much?
Yeah.
Or you're setting aside way too much money for shipping, and when that money could be spent on other things.
Right. Cool.
All right.
My next one is a hypocritical answer. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Okay.
So you should not do a self-publishing project, or you should not self-publish your project if you can't identify your audience. Right? If it's not a niche audience, if you're not clearly finding a group of people that the big publishers aren't going after. Having said that, mine's a Christmas game. It's broad, right? It's super broad.
Yeah.
Like, who doesn't like Christmas, right? I know there are a few people, but like almost everybody at least observes Christmas, right? Or at least
almost everybody except for 2/3 of the world's population.
Well, here in the U.S., let's say that, like of my peer group, right? Of the people that
I would say in the U.S., if you come up with a Christmas themed product, you're going to be just fine selling that.
Right. But it is broad, right? You would admit, right? Okay. So, but what I did there, the reason that I broke that rule, because, when I did Pickleball Paul, it was specifically targeted only to people that play pickleball, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, not many other people are going to really be interested in buying a pickleball book for their
kids who are interested in pickleball, right?
Yeah. But it's pretty narrow.
Yeah.
Right. And we've talked a lot about that here on the podcast and also in our class, that we really advise that you go after a niche audience. The reason that I think this one will be successful is because it is a twist on something that's very popular, a twist that I hadn't seen done. And by the way, there's a on our Facebook page that we're directing people to from the Facebook ads for Wicked Christmas. Some guy posted, maybe I'll find it while Lee's doing his, and we'll come back to me. He posted, like, he collects all the Christmas games there's ever been. And when I did my research, I only found like 3 or 4 Christmas games. In this picture of his hoard of Christmas games is impressive.
Whoa.
And so he's like, oh, I have to buy yours because I've bought every Christmas game that I've ever found in my life.
You just need 20,000 of that guy.
It's a niche for him. Yeah. So that's mine is go for a niche audience, or don't do it if you can't identify your niche audience.
Yeah.
All right. My next one is something I sort of touched on my last one, but it's the number one failure point of self-published projects. And that is not identifying what, like Will said, you got to find who your audience is. Then you got to figure out where to sell them. And this is $1 million question, because it's the one that no one thinks about. Especially, I've seen a lot of illustrators who get asked to illustrate a book by a writer, and then they say, oh, they're going to give me a certain percentage of sales and all that. And then my first question is, where are they going to sell them? And then if they say, oh, from my website, no, that's not enough to just put it online on your website. I mean, you'll get a couple, they'll trickle in. Maybe you sell 1 or 2 a week. It's got to be a bigger plan than that. And if that's daunting to you, you might not be the right candidate to do it. It's the number one thing to solve, really. Again, I can make greeting cards all day long. I can print them. I could think of a greeting card today, have it at my house on Friday. What do I do with the box? Where do I sell it? Who do I give it to? Am I going to go to retail stores and try to pretend I'm a company and sell them? I'm this greeting card company now. Am I going to sell them at conventions? Am I going to sell them at trade shows? If I am going to do online, what does that platform look like? And what are the costs associated with that? And you have advertising fees and all that stuff. So actually, again, making the product is easy, but what you do with it when you have it at your house is the $1 million question. And it requires a massive amount of research because Will actually has a guy who he gives a percentage of sales to who is actively out selling this product. Now, I love that model. I don't know how to do that yet. I don't know who I would get to do that. He's got somebody that he really trusts. But it's a problem. It's a sticking point. I have this huge, speaking of spreadsheets, a huge spreadsheets of people who sell tarot decks and likely buyers of an independent tarot deck project. Doesn't mean they'll all buy, but I think of it almost like a bullseye or like a dartboard kind of thing. Like you have your bullseye, and that's your local region, and that's who you start with first, and then you span out to your regional cities around you, and then you go national or international. That's sort of how that works, in my opinion, and it's a good way to start it. But without the marketing plan in place, it's just pointless to start anything.
Mm-hmm. And we talk a lot about that, marketing plans in the Self-Publishing Pro class.
Right.
Because it's like right now I'm looking at this game that I'm working on, and the creation of the game I feel like is just like 1/3 of the workload, and the marketing is 2/3. And I wish it wasn't that way. I think we all do as artists. We all wish that, and that's one reason why it's so attractive to work with publishers, right? Like if you're doing a game, working with Hasbro, if you're doing a book, working with HarperCollins or somebody like that, because you get to do the fun part and turn it over to them. Having said that, the big money is in self-publishing. I feel like unless you win a Caldecott award, or unless you just have these books that are just always hitting New York Times bestseller lists.
I almost feel like the person who's really good at marketing is way better than it's going to be more successful than the person who's really good at like crafting an amazing story.
Well, look at
creating
the games that Matthew Inman has done, the Exploding Kittens, and then the burrito, the game where you throw burritos at each other or something, the plastic burrito.
Right.
And then he's got others, and they're multi-million-dollar Kickstarters. And he's not an amazing draftsman. He is amazing at humor. And he found the right art style that complements his humor. His art style is so primitive and so ugly, but it's kind of like Beavis and Butthead art, right? It's like perfect for that product. And
right. If it was any better drawn, it would not hit.
It wouldn't work.
It wouldn't hit like it does.
But, and this is one thing that frustrates me about artists in general. This is a gross generalization. But like, we are the people who have decided to buck the system, right? We've decided not to be the doctor, the lawyer, the accountant, the school teacher, the like if you come home and you tell your parents, hey, I've decided I want to be an accountant, you're not going to get any pushback, right? I've decided to be a doctor. I've decided that I've got to go into business management. Oh, okay, great. Come home and say you want to be an artist, and all of a sudden it's like, ooh, I don't know about that, and worse, right? And so here we are as artists. We've already decided to go the hard route. And then people like Matthew Inman just smoke us with their humor and their marketing ability, right? And it's like, if artists would just wake up and go, I've got the art part figured out, right? I'm doing really good at that. All I need to do is add the marketing and the creativity and be willing to be a little entrepreneurial, and boom, I could do way better than if I was working with a traditional publisher, and we have a list of people that are friends or acquaintances that have done quite well in self-publishing their own projects. I mean, look at Brandon Sanderson, who's a kind of a friend, and I mean his Kickstarter made over $40 million, and it's like he's basically teaching his traditional publishers how it's done, you know.
Right.
And
Right.
by the way, did you guys see the game that I sent you that he launched?
Yeah.
It's already over $4 or $5 million now.
Yeah,
it's
he's doing
funny.
it. He's doing another one for those of you guys who don't know what he's talking about. Yeah, he's doing I didn't know that was a game. I saw the link that you sent, but so it's a role playing game, and
Yeah.
he's at 5,119,000. Now,
Yeah.
and again, we were talking about the negative sides of self publishing, but how much do you think he would have been offered if Hasbro or some other company
Wanted his game.
wanted this game? He'd maybe make $15,000 and get 6% of it.
Maybe 50 grand at the most, 100 grand. I can tell you this, Hasbro, and I don't think their policy has changed, but when I did 1313 Dead End Drive with them, my agent and I tried to get a royalty for a month. We kept coming back with different proposals that included a royalty, and they kept rejecting them. And finally, the vice president that we were working with was like, "Hey, I just need to let you know, if you guys have to have a royalty, you'll never work for Hasbro." Because we decided years ago that they basically, what they did was they had game creators that when they, like Parcheesi or Sorry or whatever game it was, they'd come back and they'd go, "Okay, we want to print again." And then the game creator would go, "Well, if you're wanting to make another print run, I think my royalty should go up a little bit," right? So they had all these independent game creators that they had bought games from, and they were always trying to renegotiate their contract.
Dang.
And finally, they just got sick of it and they bought them all out.
Mhm.
And they made a policy: we're never going to pay a royalty to another game creator ever. So I can pretty much with confidence tell you that if Brandon got offered, a buyout on his game, he would be looking at, like we said, maybe 50 grand, maybe 100 grand. And that's it. And now he's already raised over $4 million. It's crazy.
Crazy. All right. I've got one. You should avoid, or you shouldn't self-publish because you're afraid of the stigma of it. And I think that's something that, I've never had like a huge problem with it because I've always sort of had a self-published project in the works. But I think for some people, you don't feel like you're a legitimate creator unless you've been published by a traditional publisher. And I think some people see self-published projects as vanity projects or as, sort of like hobby projects.
Or I wasn't good enough, so I went
Yeah.
self-publishing.
Right.
Right. And that's something you just got to get over. Like, it is a legitimate path. It is a legitimate way to produce work, to make work, to be a creator. And I think the sooner you can get over those sort of feelings of like being an imposter, being like, or being not good enough, the better your work's going to be. And I think the better the more successful your project's going to be if you just own up to it and be like, yeah, I'm self-publishing. I'm proud of it. And the reason I'm doing it is because I really believe in myself and I believe this is the right path forward for me.
It's a good one.
Yep. I have one more after this.
Well,
How many more
have
do you
one.
have?
I
I have
one.
one more.
Okay, cool. It's funny that we kind of
I actually have
just
two more, but I have two more because I want to go the extra mile. I wouldn't self-publish if your project was perfect for traditional publishing. So in other words, if your project was dealt with a current event or something that is currently being sought after by publishers, there are some topics. I would say climate is one of them that I've seen traditional publishers pushing. And so if you had something that was, where your book was like, on some kind of really creative way of talking about conservation, it might be better for, if, because it's broad, it's something about conservation wouldn't be really niche, but it could go really wide. And if I would probably try to get a traditional publisher on that. If it was a biography of a marginalized person, I would probably try to get a traditional publisher to take a look at that. I don't know. There's probably a bunch of others, but I mean,
I think you could go to any Barnes and Noble today, and the problem with that is whatever's new on the shelf there was what publishers were interested in 2 years ago.
Or 3
years ago, right? So you kind of have to have knowledge of where editors and publishers are like sniffing around right now. There's ways to do that. You go to Publishers Weekly. You can just look at all the people who are making book deals, because they'll announce all the book deals for publishing, and it'll say like a brief description maybe of what the book might be, but you could see who's making the book, and you can do a little homework and see, oh, this writer writes these types of books. This is probably what they're working on. So that's sort of like your way to do like market research on that. But it could be that I totally agree with that. Well, it's like, if you have something that a publisher maybe has even asked you, like, oh, we like that, go that route. It doesn't mean you can't self-publish your next project,
right?
But having a publisher in your corner is sometimes really advantageous, because it's honestly so much less work. You may make the same amount of money or less money, but it's not as much work.
Yeah. Anecdotally, I was at an SCBWI conference, and the subject, there was an editor speaking. I can't remember which house she came from, but the topic got on, as authors, should we write? Is it okay to pander to librarians and teachers? And it sparked this whole conversation of like, all at that time, this was probably like 10 years ago. There were all these books coming out with like, My Librarian is an Alien, Bats in the Library. It was, I can't remember all the titles, but there was a bunch of them coming out.
Yeah.
And the editor was saying, as editors, we're getting tired of all the librarian pandering books, And then a bunch of librarians kept chiming in going, yeah, but we love them. We love them. They're like, they speak to us. So I don't know, like, and there's books where the teacher is the main character, and it's like, that seems like a definite appeal, because if you're going to market your, if you had a children's book that was, my teacher's a zombie or something, and it was really funny, and, imagine doing school visits. And I think a lot of authors have done that. They're like, I'm going to sell these books in the school, and it's about teachers. So teachers are going to relate, and they're going to push my book more. Anyway, that would be, if you had something that you felt like was really fresh and fun, you might want to go the traditional with that.
I like that. It's a good tip, actually, for once, from Will Terry. My last tip is we've talked about the practical aspects of it. Oh, you got to know spreadsheets. Oh, you got to have a marketing plan and all this stuff. There's one thing that precedes all that stuff, and that is you need to be comfortable not knowing things. It's a really vague and murky path. And that is, I should add, not to be a cheeseball salesman, but that's what's kind of nice about the Self-Publishing Pro cohort that we have built, is that you're around another 100 people or more or whatever that are doing the same thing. And you can say, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous. I'm getting ready to send this thing to print, or I'm getting ready to get my books from China, or whatever you're doing. But you don't realize how ambiguous it all is. Cause like somebody else's project, like Brandon, what's his name? Sanderson, he's making $5 million. I'm not going to make $5 million. And so what am I going to make? And the true answer is, I don't know. There's a number of metrics that we can give you that help, but no one's going to know. Will's project's going to do different than my project. It's going to be different than Jake's project. And it's nerve wracking, and you get better at it when you're in that position over and over, like we have been as illustrators our whole life, where you don't know annually how much you're going to make. But at least when we were working for major publishers, you can kind of guesstimate, okay, if I get a book, it'll probably be in this range. You can't do that here. As you do enough of them, then you start to build up a little resilience for that feeling, I guess, and knowing like, okay, it's going to work somehow. But I remember the first one I was doing, I just felt so sort of exposed. And this is another weird thing that goes along with that, is that even though I had done so many books with publishers, when that book comes out, there's a writer attached to it, there's the publisher attached to it. If it didn't do well in stores, I didn't consider it a personal failure. I would just basically say, oh, it was a good book. It didn't get advertising, or it didn't get good shelf space, or whatever. Mm-hmm. But when you do your own, you are putting yourself way out there. Right. And the feeling of personal failure is high. You're nervous about it. You don't want to look like a fool. You don't want to look like, oh, nobody wanted the thing that I thought was really cool. And it's just some kind of mental fortitude that's aside from the practicalities of a project, that you have to dig in and say, all right, I mean, here we go. I'm just going to do it. And I don't know what's going to happen. And again, being comfortable with not knowing.
Mm-hmm. Can I add to yours?
Sure.
So with being comfortable not knowing, you also have to train yourself to be comfortable digging for answers. So you go in not knowing, but you're constantly Googling. You're Googling everything. And that I had a day of Google yesterday of like, because I'm setting up my actual Kickstarter campaign pages and the pre-launch pages and stuff. And the last Kickstarter I did was like 3 years ago. And there's a ton of new stuff on their site. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm like you commit to doing, that's what you're saying, Lee, right? You commit to doing this thing.
Right.
And then you're like, I'm going to figure out how to get it done. I'm going to figure out what the answers are. And there's somebody out there that knows.
Right.
There's other people. There's forums.
And secretly you're crossing your fingers too that it all works. I mean, that in the background, you have to have that like, oh, please let this thing just sort of work.
Success begets success.
Right.
And so the more you train yourself with these smaller projects that you start, that you bite off and do, the more you do, the more confidence you go in. You just go in going, mm-hmm. I know me.
Right.
And I know that I'm going to get this thing done.
Yeah. And we talk about that a little bit in the class, because we've learned over time, the three of us, that we talk about something in the class called a minimal viable product. And that mm-hmm. is, the basic idea is, for your first self-publishing project, you don't want to start a 5-book anthology with a box set. That takes 4 years to make. It's just too big of a swing, or like a feature film movie or something that you think you're going to do. And we have a lot of youth. It sounds like a joke, but I have a lot of students who, when I ask them what they want to do, they say, I want to own my own game studio. And I'm like, it's a great goal down the road, but that's a big swing right out of school. And so we talk about what's the minimum thing you can do? Can you do a 10-page little graphic novel or 12-page graphic novel? Can you make a pen or something smaller that is actually doable, a 24-page children's book, a little bit easier than some other things. And so, just kind of dipping your toes in instead of going all in with this huge, massive project is sort of the way around that. But yeah, I mean, there's ways to do it.
That's good. That was actually my, I worded it different, but that was going to be my last thing. And that was, if you don't have a support group, it's going to be so hard to do your own self-publishing project, because you mm-hmm. just need people to bounce ideas off of, to get feedback from. And again, like Lee was saying, don't want to be, all salesy, but that's really what so many people love about Self-Publishing Pro, is the community aspect of it, where weekly we're on, a call with us, where you're asking questions, but you're also hearing what everybody else is asking. And that's one of the coolest features, I think, is someone might ask a question you never even thought to ask. Like, oh yeah, that's a good point. Like, I didn't even think of that. And now you're getting an answer to that question that you didn't even think to ask. And you come out of that being so much more knowledgeable than when you went into it.
Yep. Because a lot of times you don't know what questions to ask.
Exactly. Exactly. And then the whole, where you could post, here's what I'm working on. How does it look? And, people are always giving great feedback. This part looks amazing and this part's not really working for me. What if you tweaked it like this? Oh, that's a good idea. You should, there's so much good stuff happening over there. So that's why we do recommend, if this is a path that you're feeling, after listening to all these things, feeling like, I could really, some of these things are no problem. Some of these things I could really learn. And maybe self-publishing is right for me in the next 6 months. Get started on the right foot with, Self-Publishing Pro, because we cover all of that stuff.
Yep.
For you. Cool. Is there anything else you guys want to add? Did you figure out a money tip, Lee?
My money tip is wait until next week to hear a money tip.
Save your money and wait until you hear good advice on money, and then spend your money.
I love it. Okay, cool. Well, let's take us out, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, everybody. SVS or 3-Point Perspective is brought to you by SVSLearn, where becoming a great illustrator starts. Your hosts are Will Terry, Lee White, and I'm Jake Parker. I just remembered one thing too. Like last week, we talked about there's a lot of discussion about iPads and whether they're a tool you could use professionally for publishing. Go read the YouTube comments, because people piped in with their experiences, and a lot of people are like, one person was like, yeah, I did a full children's book in Procreate on the iPad. And then took it into Photoshop to do CMYK. And some people, reached out to Procreate and said, hey, what's your plans for all of these different things that we want to have in this program that make it a little bit more of a professional tool? And they say, it's in our pipeline. It's things we're working on. So definitely go check out that discussion if that was something that was interesting. Just want to do a little bit of follow up there with that. Okay.
Can I share one more thing really quick?
Yeah.
I forgot to share this this picture. So let me just do this really quick.
Right. You guys thought we were done with the episode. We're not.
Hey, we need to give them an emoji too.
Yeah, if you made it this
do
far.
a Christmas tree emoji.
Christmas tree.
I like that. A Christmas tree. I was gonna say
here, if you're on YouTube, you can see it. This is the guy who posted all the Christmas games that he's collected. So Wicked Christmas is going to be part of this collection. I'm
curious to know how many units for each one of those sold. Like if you're, joining the ranks of like the least selling board games or the most selling board games.
The Santa versus Jesus is interesting.
I wonder how you play that game.
Dice thrown, cookies. Anyway. Yep,
all right.
There it is.
Thanks for sharing that, Will.
Yep.
Podcast produced by Daniel Tu. That's Daniel TU. Special thanks to our team manager, Preston Smith, our keeper of the curriculum, Austin Shirtliff, our show notes wrangler, Lily Howell, our chief operations officer, Lisa Fott, and our in-house illustrator, Annalise Black. Now go draw something. All right, we did it.
I think we need to sell pens of our rabbit, and we need to sell shirts or pens that say "Go draw something." That is such a cool phrase.
Yeah.
Or at least maybe hats. I would totally love that as a hat.
Let's do it.
We should. Okay.
Go draw something with a little hat, a little rabbit on it.
People ought to be.
And then SVS on the back.
We should already be wearing it.
Or no, you know what'd be cool? The rabbit up front, and then go draw something on the back.
Yeah. Same with the shirt.
Yeah. I wonder if we could do the rabbit on. I've been really loving the different materials of shirts that have come out besides cotton.
Mm-hmm.
Like the more stretchy kind of
breathable
stuff. I wonder if we could get it on that.
I think the three of us have become really expert in leaving money on the table.
Well, there's only so much you can do. I mean, we're
Right.
running so many different things at once. I don't feel bad about it. I think we come up with 20 ideas. We implement 2 of them at a time.
Yeah. What are you going to do?
I'll tell you this though. Check this out. This is a crazy story about self-publishing or self-building wealth. My friend's selling this farmhouse outside of Atlanta, and having a tough time with it. Looking for the right buyer. It's a little bit of an expensive property at $1.3 million, I think, 15 acres, whatever. So it was tough to sell it. So he finally got a buyer, and they haggled down like $75K or whatever, and he sold it. It's going through that process right now. And so then, he's wondering, like, did I leave money on the table? Did I get as much as I could have? And he Googles the people buying it. And this woman who owns this company it was like feminine products and girl stuff. I think the company was called Honey Pot. You can look it up if you want to. She sold that company for $384 million.
Wow.
And he's like, oh, I shouldn't have haggled. I should have studied, because that was probably nothing to her. But can you imagine? And so I started thinking about our company in relation to that. Oh, man, I wish we were building in that kind of capacity, because we're not even close. I mean, we're not even at the starting point to compete with something like that. And
right, our revenue is a rounding error for that company.
Our income is the tip that she leaves when she goes to a nice restaurant.
Right.
But I just the scale of that number really shook me, that if you do it right, whether it's self-publishing or whether it's the school that we built or whatever, the money can be there. Like Brandon Sanderson kind of project. Like, man, I wonder if that's in the cards. How many projects do you have to do before you get one of those?
Mm-hmm.
You see them on Shark Tank, every now and again.
Well, they bring their 50, 100,000, 200,000 followers to a project. I've been looking at all the card games that have done the most funded, and they're all people that, like, when they do their YouTube videos or their Kickstarter video, they're so talking to their people.
Right.
They are not talking to me, and they're not talking to you. They're talking to that group of people. They're like, hey, you guys, we're back again. Thank you. And then they mention something that you don't even know what it is. Like, remember when we did this, we promised we would do it. So now here we are, and we're doing it. And anyway, and they're like $3 million,
Do you know what the 4 levers in business that you have power to work on to make something profitable or not? This is I've been, while I'm drawing, I've been listening to like business podcasts or whatever, and like seminars that people post online and whatnot. Number 1 is traffic. Number 2 is conversion. Number 3 is price. Number 4 is churn. And if your business isn't making money, it's either because you're not getting, and this is to artists too, I guess. Like if your art is not selling and you're not, your art business isn't working, it's because you're not getting enough traffic. You may have enough traffic, but you're not converting people to actually buy the thing that you're selling. Or maybe the problem is you're charging too low of a price, and so you're not making enough money, or you're charging too much and nobody wants to buy it. Or churn, once you've sold it, you don't have a repeat customer, and you want to figure out a way to get someone to buy the next book or to buy the next thing. If you could figure out those and get all those things working together, man, you're good. You're good to go.
I'd like to add that to that a little bit, like something that we talked about a little bit before, just the 3 of us chatting, that sometimes you're charging too low, and that can be a problem as well. Yeah. There's implied quality sometimes, especially with art kind of stuff. And I found that when I first started art fairs, I didn't start selling until I raised my prices. That makes no sense to me, but whatever. Some people like to humble brag, like, oh, that was only $3,000, but they're really sort of bragging. They don't want something that if you're selling a painting for $100, well, that's just a cheap product.
Right. Right. That's a good point. Okay. I'm shutting it down.
Sick of you guys. Leave me alone.